when you're just starting out trying to flex your design muscles, it could be a little bit overwhelming. You may not even know where to start. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my entire design process from start to finish, going over an actual product that I'm currently designing for a client. So part one of the process is to define a concept. Now, a concept could be pretty much anything. It could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be some type of object that you find inspiration from. You want to be able to draw inspiration from this concept because it's going to be your guide whenever you go to make design changes or make design decisions. Think of it as a common theme throughout your design. So you want to choose a word or phrase that's still relatable to the project that you're working on. For example, the project that I'm currently working on is for a sushi restaurant in Taiwan. They're wanting me to create these sushi holders for them so that they can place their food on as a way of presenting the food for the guests. I looked at a few renderings that they had of their future restaurant, as well as some marketing information like their logo. By gathering the background information from the client, I'm able to define who their target market was and also what they're trying to achieve in terms of their service at the restaurant. I was inspired by some of the Japanese plants, and one of those common plants that I saw very often was the Japanese cherry blossom. So the object, that Japanese cherry blossom, became the concept for the project that I'm currently working on right now, and I'll show you why. When doing research on a product, I typically like to start on Google Images as well as Pinterest. There's the two main places that I go to for my research. This here is the cherry blossom, and how I analyze this object is I like to break it down into simple elements. This is a very common design approach you can see from Picasso, and how he takes the form of the face and breaks it down to smaller basic elements and geometrical shapes. You can find this in Apple products. They break things down to very basic elements. It's a pretty common theme with minimalistic design, which is what I prefer. And it boils down to this idea of form following function. So the object itself, the form of the object and how it's created follows the actual function or purpose that it serves. That being said, I'm going to analyze this cherry blossom right here. What I see is there's this core in the middle, which unites all of the petals, and the petals itself comes out at in a linear way from that center. So I could break it down into a circle for the center here, and then sort of straight lines kind of fanning out from that center. So I think that is something that I can use. It's very simple, it's very basic, and I feel like it's going to give the overall project a very clean look. I can use this circle idea within the flower as the main holder, sort of holding on to the actual sushi roll. These are just thoughts in my mind that I'm thinking of while I'm doing my research, while I'm looking at the object itself, kind of just playing through these ideas in my head before I actually commit to something in a sketch. Now that the concept has been determined, I feel like it's a strong concept. I can draw inspiration from it. I'll look at the program requirements, things like dimensions, things like usage, things like features that they're looking for, materials. Sometimes clients will know exactly what they want, but there are often times where clients really depend on you as a designer to figure it out, which is awesome. I really love those clients who just gives me the freedom to create something really unique for them. The client already had a product that they were working with, which is this thing right here, but it's not going to work for their new restaurant. The new restaurant has a different menu, different type of service style. So they're going to have two different sushi roll sizes. The longest one will be about a 3x4, and then the smaller roll will be slightly less than that. Although they're not serving more than one roll at a time, they do want the holder to be able to fit both sizes, just because it's less product to order, less product to take care of at the restaurant, less chances for them to mistaken one size over the other. We're just gonna have one holder that is able to serve both size rolls. That's really all the requirements they gave me. This gives me a lot of room for interpretation. My goal now is to take the list of requirements and my concept and somehow mesh these things together to create a product that not only fulfills my design concept and my design philosophy, but also fulfill the requirements that is needed by the client, which is probably the more important part. I want to add that when you're starting out, just know that this process takes time. It's like working out any other muscles on your body. In this case, you're working that mental design muscle, maybe your hands as well when it comes to drawing and sketching. Just know that it is going to be tough in the beginning. Once you develop your creativity, your style, things just simply fall in together much quicker. So don't feel like you're bad at this just because the ideas aren't coming as quickly. What I find really helpful to develop your design muscle is this next step, which is sketching and modeling. So with sketching, don't be afraid if you draw like a first grader. Don't be afraid if you don't know how to draw at all. The purpose of sketching is for you to lay down your ideas on paper so that you can see it in front of you. You can keep a record of what ideas you have been developing, what works, what doesn't work, and you can see the progression of a certain product from start to finish, how you deviated from these concepts. Oftentimes when we're thinking of ideas in our head, it's just stuck in our head. We don't really see all the fine details. We don't see how these ideas relate to each other. So sketching is going to help you tremendously develop your creativity. The goal here is to figure out how you think as a designer, whether it be very detailed sketches or whether it be very abstract form-like sketches, which I typically like to do. Because doing more of those abstract sketches, it allows me to go through these multiple iterations a lot quicker. So here are some of the sketches that I worked on. Looking back at the Japanese cherry blossom, there's this core and the leaves that come out of that core. I took that leaf and I broke it down into very basic elements. I have the core and then also the lines that represents the petals. So I thought maybe I could create an inverse of this where the linear lines are the sushi roll and the circle could be the actual holder itself. And from there, we simplify it just a little bit more since we have two rolls, right? We got 1, 2 roll there, and then kind of like that core. We don't really know what the form of that core is just yet, but I know that there's this cross that I'm working with here. So from this diagrammatic sketch, I get myself some constraints. In this case, there was this rectangle here. And I thought, what if these lines become a negative space, kind of carving out of this rectangle? And I like that idea, so I wanted to continue to develop on that. With this rectangle here, it's too sharp. It doesn't really convey that flower look. So I thought, maybe what if we soften these interior edges here, like give it a nice little round over or something. I started to think of the entire shape or how it's going to look like at this point. And once I find the shape, then I start to think of it in 3 dimensions. So these are just cross section, and this is just a side view of the actual holder, giving it some height and some dimensions there. Don't really know what these dimensions are just yet. I think we'll finalize that in the model. But this red here represents the sushi holder, how it sticks up above it. Also over here as well. That's just a quick overview of my sketch here and how it came from the initial concept, initial idea to some sort of form for the product. During this process, I'll give myself about 30 to 45 minutes of pure sketching time, no distractions. That's usually what I can handle in one setting before I just need a break. From there, I'll give myself another 30-minute session to refine the sketches and to make sure that the changes that I'm making are going to fit the concept as well as address the project requirements. I give myself these time constraints because when it comes to design, you can spend a lot of time in this process. Oftentimes, when it comes to these design projects, there's a certain budget that the client is willing to invest in for the design. If the client doesn't have a budget, the client doesn't have any time constraints, go ahead and flesh out every single idea to make the project better. And the more time you spend on it, of course, it's going to be better in the end. But most of the time, the budget is going to be limited. You don't want to chase perfection here. And this is why products that we use on a daily basis always have updates, always have generation 2, generation 3. Pick a stopping point and be good with it. Once the sketching phase is done, I'll have a good sense of what the product is going to look like. And at that point, that's when I'll go into the 3D software and actually model it. Now we're going to model the actual product in Shapr3D, who is a sponsor of this video. If you guys have been following me, you guys know that I've been using Shapr3D for a while now. I really love their program, really love their software. If you do want to check it out, there's a link in my description down below. Use the discount code for 10% off. So it's a very easy software to learn. I love it because it uses a pen, the Apple Pencil, or you can actually use this on a desktop if you're more comfortable with that. So let's start to model this thing here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and create my overall dimensions here. I'm going to use inches, making sure all my scale is correct. All right, so we got, we're gonna go 3 inches. by 2 and 1/2. Just to give us a good starting point. And I'm going to extrude this volume to 1.5 inches. Like that. So very easy, very quick. Everything just with your pencil. If you want to reference off of a surface and draw off of that surface, then you just double click with your finger, and then it will take you to that plane so you can start doing some lines. In this case, I'm going to start doing lines for the carve out on this volume here. So we're going to just offset this. All right, so we have the line set up for the void space. So I'm just going to click on these boxes and we're just going to extrude it down because they're all going to be the same depth. So we'll do 3/4 of an inch. Perfect. So that's pretty easy. Turn off these sketch planes because we no longer need them. Now we have our general shape that we can start molding. And because, as I mentioned earlier in the sketching phase, I don't like the rectangle look. It looks too blocky. And also we have to figure out this curve here as well so that this sushi roll can actually sit in there nice and tight. So I'm just going to select these corners here and we're just going to pull it. There you go. And same thing over here. So we have the 2 rolls, space for the 2 rolls there, and that's looking pretty good. So now we got to soften up our outside corners as well as the inside corners. I'm just going to select the outside for now. And we're just going to pull it back till it reaches this edge there. That's looking pretty good. All right, so now go on the inside. Select the inside corners. Pull it out to match the exterior, which was 5/8. All right, so we have that leaf look, which is what I was going for in the sketch. It looks softer because now we rounded over that exterior corner. I think this look is looking good. It's a pretty simple project. There's not much to it. So we just now have to really play with the dimensions after we meet with the client. I do think that this might be a little bit too thick, but you know, it's as simple as planing it down on the jointer, so it's not a big deal. However, I do like the overall shape of it. So I think I'm going to stop there. It's a very simple project. It's not very complicated at all. On Shapr, it's really easy. It's very intuitive to model things because you're using this pen here. So that's what I love about the software. At this point, we're going to present this to the client. If there's any objections, then we'll make a few changes. And if they approve, then we can start doing the samples. I like creating prototypes because even though a 3D model is a good representation of what it looks like, it's still a 2D image. You're still looking at it on a screen, on your iPad or on your iPhone. You'd be very surprised how different your understanding of scale is when you're looking at a screen versus having the actual product in front of you. And also you don't get this texture and material on the 3D software. If there's something that needs to be touched, it needs to be held, you don't really get that with a 3D model. For me, a prototype sample is a must. And yes, I do charge for these. I recommend for every single client, especially on these smaller products, do at least 3. With those 3 samples, I'm able to figure out one, the scale and then final sizing, and making change to the dimensions if I need to. Second, since I'm using a CNC, I'm able to figure out the speeds and feeds and how I need to approach the manufacturing side of things. And third, I am able to actually select different types of materials that I can choose from. Once the samples are made, I'll meet with the client. During this meeting, we're not going to talk about the design. That's already been discussed, it's been finalized, it's been approved. We're going to look at the details like the dimensions. It's going to work for the actual product, scale, weight, material selection, those things that can change at this moment, and it doesn't really affect the overall design. We don't have to go back into the drawing board and make any big changes. Sometimes, although it rarely happens, a client does change their mind. And from experience, this is because they didn't really present enough information that is needed for the actual project. So it's important that you gather all your information as much as possible earlier on in the design process. That way you're not having this weird conversation of, hey, we need to have more money for design because there are a lot of changes now. Don't want to be in that situation. I met with the client, and overall they loved the sample that I created for them, which is this thing right here. The one comment that they did have was that the base is a little bit too thick, so it felt a little bit too bulky. So I think we're just going to change that and call it a day. They love the size of the gaps here for their sushi roll holders. They like the overall design. It works really well for them. They liked how simple and clean it looked. It doesn't take away from the actual sushi roll. Overall, it was a good meeting. We only have to make one small adjustment and we can go into production mode. As you can see, I'm not on my iPad anymore. My iPad, we forgot to charge it last night after my son was using it. So there's no battery. But the cool thing about Shapr3D is you don't need an iPad to actually do the work. Let's say your battery dies. The software actually automatically saves for you onto the cloud server. You can pick things back up on your desktop, which is what we're going to do right now. But actually, I gotta restart my computer. Hold on a second. I mean, that's the reason why I like the iPad. No need to restart your computer in the middle of trying to do a recording or do a project. So iPad for the win. All right, back online. Here we are at the home screen. As you can tell, it's pretty much the same as the actual mobile version. I'm just gonna go into my project here. There's been 2 edits that I've worked on in the past. One is on the PC, one is on the iPad. So the iPad, it shows me that is the newer version. So we're just gonna go with that newer version. All right, so now it's uploading and boom, there we go. This is where we left off on the iPad. I'm going to just simply move that base up just a little bit. That's all they really wanted. Let's go ahead and shift this thing. We talked at the meeting that maybe about 1/4 of an inch is going to look good. It's going to bring the sushi roll down just a little bit, and that's going to reduce the bulk and the weight of the actual holders. So I'm just going to go 1/4 of an inch. Oops, other way. Let's go negative. And there we have it. So just by looking at it, I think we can go a little bit more and raise up the top of the holders. I think if we go another maybe another 1/8 of an inch, I think that's going to make it perfect. Yeah, I think that is looking good right there. And then what will happen is, since we still want to keep the height the same, I'll have to go up in the same amount that I reduced from the base. So in this case, we went up 1/4 of an inch plus 1/8 of an inch, which gives us 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to actually extrude by 3/8. Boom. Just a little technical thing that we can get into right now and really quick. If I choose to just offset this face, you'll notice that it starts to create that circle, right? I don't want to do that. I just want to go straight up. So if you want to go straight up, keeping the actual profile of the extrusion, then you just use the extrude tool rather than the offset face. So I'm going to go extrude. You can see with the extrude, it keeps that profile nice and straight. And we're just going to go up 3/8 of an inch. All right, there you go. So even with 3/8 of an inch, the nori paper is still going to stick up above the top of the holder, which is what they're going for. The one thing I hope Shapr3D comes out with in the future, they don't do it at this time, is the CAM software side of things. Right now, you can only model, you can't do the actual tool paths on the Shapr3D software. So hopefully in future we can have everything just packaged in one software. That would be very nice. I know I didn't go into a lot of details on the software, but if you are interested in a full detailed rundown of the software, leave a comment down below. If there's a big interest for it, then I'll maybe make a series or a session just going over the software itself, because I think it's a really good software that has a lot of potential. The ability to go from your iPad seamlessly to your desktop, that's a huge convenience when I'm working in a CAD software. Really awesome. So I'm gonna take this model, send it to my CAM software, and then get this thing into production. We gotta make 50 of these, so I'll see you guys at the CNC. And that's pretty much my entire design process from start to finish. The last thing I wanted to add is the best way for you to get exposure is posting your products onto social media. But with that, you're always going to have people commenting or critiquing on your design. Some of those comments will be negative and some of them will be positive. I would take those comments with a grain of salt. If you want to continue developing your design or developing your creative style, I recommend finding somebody you trust and ask them for critiques. Don't just ask anybody random on the internet. Find somebody who you really look up to or who inspires you and reach out to them, see if they would like to give you some input on your design. So if small product design isn't your thing, check out this playlist here where I go through the entire process of designing my living room. Or if CNC is your thing, check out this video here where I designed and built this table using the CNC. Until next time guys, this is Bao with Design Craft Workshop. See ya.